So I'm going to show you a little kind of cheat way to get onto Kubernetes, and we're going to use a project called Kompose, Kompose with a K. So coming back over to our project here, Kompose, I want you to click here on Kompose, which is kompose.io. This is an official project from the Kubernetes organization, which is part of the Cloud Native Foundation, which I believe is part of the Linux Foundation. Okay, and then I want you to come in here, and I think there's an installation tab right there. And it's another curl command that you're going to download and run. And right there, that's the one that you want. You're going to have to do the same kind of song and dance, make it executable with +X, and then move that into your path. And it looks like it will work on Windows as well. It looks like they have a binary that you just install from GitHub. But again, I think you're stuck in PowerShell land. OK. So now that I have Kompose, you should, is it just version? There you go. I have 1.19, 1.19. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to go modify our Docker Compose file a little bit to work with this. So that's what Kompose does for you, is it takes a Docker Compose file that we wrote, and it turns that into a Kubernetes configuration, which is pretty cool because Docker Compose is pretty easy by comparison to understand to Kubernetes configurations. So as long as we're good building Docker Compose files, we can be using Kubernetes. And what you can do, and what I do personally when I'm messing around with Kubernetes, I'll start with the Docker Compose file. I'll use Kompose to convert everything to Kubernetes output, and then I'll go from there. OK, so we're going to come into our docker compose.yml. We're going to change the image, or the build, to an image, because it won't do builds for us. That's one thing that Kompose will not do for you, nor Kubernetes. So I want you to change this to btholt/node-app. So this is on Docker Hub. It's literally the app that we've been building this whole time. I just built it and pushed it to Docker Hub so that we can do this. But you have to go through a registry. So whether that's running your own registry locally, or that's pushing it to GitHub package registry, or pushing it to Docker Hub, or Azure container registry, there's a bunch of different places you can push these. For now, we're just going to use Docker Hub because that's the easiest one. OK, ports 3000. And we're going to get rid of this volumes part because you don't use Kubernetes for development purposes, so that's all this stuff is not useful. We're going to put ports back if you took that out like I did, which is 3000:3000. Links DB, that's fine. Environment, that's fine. We got to add one more though, which is labels. So there's certain things that Kubernetes needs to know about our particular service. And one of them is that this is a load balancing service, which means that it needs to have like some sort of load balancer in front of it. So if we want to have 10 containers running at the same time, Kubernetes can do that load balancing for us. So Docker Compose doesn't have this concept of load balancing built into it. So we have to kind of indicate to Kompose like, hey, please put this into the Kubernetes load balancing situation. So you say compose.service.type, and you just say this is a load balancer. So labels are typically more used for things like this is a database container, and then it makes it easy for you to like search through your clusters to find things. They're just labels in that sense. OK. And last thing here on, we have to give the database explicit ports to be using. So we're going to say, please put this on 27017. OK, so now we've kind of composified this Docker Compose file. All right. So the one thing that I wanted to point out to you is we did this load balancer thing right here. If you try and push this to something like Amazon or to Azure, they know how to deal with it, load balancers. They have built-in services for you. Typically, they're not cheap. So if you have like 15 different services and they're all load balancers, that's going to get really expensive really quick. What you're actually going to want to do for the most part is not have each one of your services be load balanced. You're going to want to have something like Nginx in front of everything, and that load balances across everything. So just be aware of that. I don't want someone to call me with like, I had a $10,000 bill and I'm going to kill you. Please don't. I put a nice note in here inside of the Kompose. Where is it? Of a great blog post from Google Cloud explaining load balancer. There's another thing called node port, which is just like exposes the same thing on everyone's port. So like if I say expose this on port 3000, it'll be exposed on every container inside of my clusters. Port 3000 will be that one container. And you can also use load balancer. And there's another thing called ingress. Ingress is not necessarily a thing, it's just an idea, which is like Nginx, right? Having Nginx manage all of your ingress of traffic into your particular cluster. Kind of a deep topic. You don't really need to know. This is going to work for our development environment. All right, so I need you to do kind of a hack here. This is for how Kompose is expected to work. It needs some way to talk to your kube control. So you're going to run this kube control proxy port 8080. And it's just going to start serving traffic on port 8080. You can actually take a look at it, I think. It's nothing exciting if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's basically an API for anyone to interact with your kube control, right? It's kind of exposing that to your local computer. Okay, so I don't want to run that in the foreground. You can actually just say, if I put and here at the end, it's going to run it in the background. So now if I look at my computer, which I obviously have a lot of things, so if I do ps-aux grep kubectl, you can see here it's running here in the background. That's what that and does at the end, is it forces stuff into the background. You can do that with like screen and tmux and a bunch of other stuff too. I'm just lazy and don't use those. All right, so now that's running, and this won't work, by the way, if you don't do that. So now we have Kompose. We're going to say Kompose up. And you can see here, it created a DB service, it created a web service, it created a deployment for both of these, and everything's running in the default namespace. So in theory, we should be able to come here and say localhost 3000, and it's working now within Kubernetes. So pretty cool. You are now running a Kubernetes cluster on your computer, which I find to be very cool. Like, this is very difficult, and I spent a bunch of time getting it down to be this simple, so I need you to be, damn it, like, I need you to be impressed by this. So let's take a look at what's actually happening underneath the hood. So if I say kubectl get all, you can see here I have this deployment and this deployment going out, and I have replica sets going. I have some cluster IPs, but the part that I'm actually most interested in is the services, right? I have a service for DB, I have a service for web. This one is a load balancer. This one's just some static IPs. And if this gives you cluster IPs, keep in mind that these are internal cluster IPs. So if I tried to like ping this, it wouldn't work because this only works inside of Kubernetes, inside of its virtual network. But this one does have an external P. It's just exposing on localhost on port 30 or 3000.